I'm going to walk you through building a custom cabinet in Pro100 Design Software. There's a number of ways. There's two ways to, actually three ways that you can build a custom cabinet in Pro100. The first way is to take a simple box that you have in your library, bring it into the program, and then modify it to create a cabinet. This box is created by you using your own joinery methods. In this case, I have like this shelf here, for example. I built these shelves using blind dados. If I turn on semi-transparency, you can see that these are blind dados being used here. I have nailers and stretchers. You might choose not to have nailers and stretchers. My nailers and stretchers happen to dado into the sides of the cabinet. That's also up to you. I have a notch toe kick. Those are just a few examples of how I may set up some simple boxes which I could use to create drawer banks, single door, single drawer cabinets, or whatever type of cabinet I wanna create using my the boxes that I have as starting points. Another way you can go about creating cabinets is to take complete cabinets that you have in your library and modify them. Okay, so I could have this cabinet here in my library. I could drop it in the floor plan, resize it, change the material, change the countertop, and so on. I also have a library of parts. In this case, door pair, face frame, nailer, notch panel, shelf with blind dado, stretcher. I can have as many parts. I can create as many parts and add them to my library as I like, and then drag parts out into the program and combine them to create a cabinet. This is the shelf with blind dado we looked at before in the cabinet that I dragged out at the beginning of the video. Okay, to be thorough here, I'm going to actually start from the beginning, part by part, and build a cabinet. To keep the video short, I'm not going to create every single part, but you'll get the idea of how it works. When I say short, as short as possible. So I'm going to click on New Element, which is a new part, and I will make this part 0.75 inches in thickness and place it on the wall. And then I'm going to right click this part, go to Dimensions, and I'm going to change the height to 34.5, depth to 24, and apply. And since I still have this part selected, so I'm going to click this button here to move it to the bottom of the screen, and this button to move it to the back. Now I'm going to shape this part. To do that, I'll just right click it and go to Shape. This takes me to the Shape Editor, which can be used to create angles, curves, and arcs to alter the shape of a part. I'm going to click the Insert key at the bottom of the part to insert a point where I can shape the part. And I'll do the same thing at the front of the part. Now this bottom section, I'm going to shrink that from 12 inches to 4. And I'm going to do the same thing for the front section that I have highlighted in blue. And I'm going to shrink that to 4. And I went in the wrong direction there, so I'm going to undo and change the direction. and hit enter again. Whoops, I have to select the right section there. There we go. Now I'm going to change this 180-degree angle to 90 to create my notch. And I'm done shaping the part, so I'll close out. Alright, now I'm going to double click this part, go to General, and I'll call that my left panel, hit enter. And to create my right panel, I don't have to start all over again. I can copy this panel and then rename it to a right panel. I'm going to hit this target button to center the focus of the program on the part that I'm working on. Then I will simply drag this part, left click to drag this part to the right, and before I release my left mouse button, I'll hit the right mouse button. That creates a copy of the part. And I'm going to make sure this part is on the floor and all the way to the back. Then I'll double click it and change the name to right panel. Now, an important thing for you to notice here is the structure menu on the bottom right corner of the screen here. That shows you all the parts and objects that you currently have in the workspace that you're working on for your project. And you'll see the importance of that as the video continues. So I'll just hit apply here just to rename the part, and OK. Now I'm going to bring in a shelf with blind dado, and I will move that all the way to the back, all the way to the left. Now, and this is very important, this corner of the room is what I call the 0 point in the program. So, for example, when I right click this part, or I'm going to double click it, which is the same thing as right clicking it actually, unless you want to go to if you want to open the properties, you can simply double click. If you want to open the menu and then go to properties, you pick the property that you want to go directly to. But if you want to enter the shape editor, you have to do a right click. So since I'm not going in the shape editor, I'm just going to double click it, and I'm going to go to position. And this is where what I was talking about comes into play, where this bottom corner is the 0 point of the workspace that I'm using. I moved this part as far left as it would go until it butted into my side panel. The side panel is 3/4 of an inch thick. So the position of this part in the workspace is 3/4 of an inch from the left wall, and it's sitting up against the floor, so it's 0 inches from the bottom, and it's butting up against the back wall, so it's 0 inches from the back. I want it to be 4 inches up from the bottom, so it's right above the toe kick. So I'm going to put in 4 inches there and apply. And I'm going to change the dimensions, because this part is actually going to be in front of, I'm going to have a 3/4 inch nailer behind the bottom, as well as a 1/4 inch back. So that means this part has to be 23 inches in depth to fill the space between the front of the side panel and butt right up against the back. I have the height of this part locked at 3/4 of an inch, so if when I get further along and I combine these parts to create a cabinet, when I decide to resize the cabinet, The width will be allowed to change, depth will be allowed to change, but the thickness of the part will always stay the same. I also have the thicknesses of the side panels locked as well. So if you ever have problems resizing a completed cabinet, uh, it might be a problem of what dimensions of various parts are locked and unlocked. So because I have a 1 inch, I have a 3/4 inch back and a 3/4 inch nailer and a 1/4 inch back. I need to be 1 inch from the back wall, and that puts this this bottom exactly flush with the front of the side panels. And I'm going to name it a bottom instead of a shelf. And then let's take a closer look at the part. We'll look at it from the plan view. And I'm going to go to my plus sign here and draw around the area that I want to zoom into. It's a quick way to zoom in. And you can see from the top here that the bottom is flush with the side panel and it's not dadoed in right now. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to double click the part and position, and I'm going to change the position from 3/4 of an inch from the left to 1/2 inch. And you actually do have to type the 0 in front of the 0.5, not just 0.5. Then when I apply it, the part actually goes into the side panel. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit with my mouse wheel and grab the right side and click move to left. Then I'm going to double click that right panel and change the position to 23.25 inches from the left instead of 23.5. So now the right side of the bottom is dadoed into the right panel. Now let's go back to our perspective view. I have semi-transparency on so you can see through the part, and that can be turned on or off with this button here if you don't want to see through the cabinet parts. Now to create my middle shelf, all I have to do is take my if my shelves are identical to my bottom in how they're constructed, I can just take the bottom panel, move it up, and right click. That creates a copy. Now I'm gonna double click on the new shelf, and it copied the name over as well, so I'm gonna change that to shelf, change the position to 0.25, and we're in good shape. Or actually 0.5. There we go. Now let's drag in a nailer. And I'm going to shrink this so it fits right between the insides of the cabinet. Now, let's double click it to check the dimensions. And thickness is 3/4, and I'm going to lock the height because I don't want the height of this nailer to change when I resize the cabinet. Okay. Now I'm going to, while I have this nailer selected, I'm going to select the bottom panel, and I'm going to click on Align Bottoms. So that aligns the bottoms of those parts, as you can see. And I'm going to stretch this nailer to go the full width of the inside of the cabinet there, and it automatically stops when it butts into the next part. Now I'm going to double click the nailer and go back to my dimensions, and if I was using dados, I would just increase the size of this cabinet, say to 23 inches wide, and then I'll change the position to from 3/4 of an inch from the left to 0.5, so that'll move it 1/4 inch into the left panel. So at this point it is 1/4 of an inch into the left panel and 1/4 of an inch into the right panel. Let me see if I can get you a better view from the top. There, you can see it there. To make my top nailer, I'm simply going to copy this one by clicking and moving it with my left mouse button, and then I'll right click before releasing the left mouse button. Then while that nailer is still selected, I'm going to hold my shift key and click either my right or left panel. Then I'll click top align tops. Then I'll click on my wall and then double click the nailer to select it. Clicking on the wall was just to unselect every part of the cabinet. Now I'm going to change the position here to 0.5 like we did on the bottom nailer. Now I'm just going to copy the nailer to make my back. So I'm going to click my top nailer, move it forward, and right click. Now I'm going to double click this part, I'm going to change the thickness to 1/4 of an inch. The height I will unlock the height for now. And I'll change the width to say 10 inches, and you'll see why here. Okay. Alright. Now I am going to move this, while having what's going to be I'm going to rename it first. So I double clicked it, call it back. Then I'm going to click this button to move the back as far back as it'll go, making sure it's butting into the nailer. While I still have it selected, I'm going to hold my shift key and click the nailer and align the tops. Now, selecting the back again, I'm going to click this grab point, move it as far left as it'll go until it bumps into something. Then clicking the bottom right grab point, I'll go all the way to the bottom. And let's take a side view. Let's take a look take a look from the side. And here you can see the 1/4 inch back. It fits in there just perfectly. We allowed 1 inch behind the shelves in the beginning, so it's not a problem. Now, again, if I decide I want to dado my back into my side panels, I'll double click it, increase the width by whatever is necessary depending on how deep my dados are. So I'm going from 22.5 to 23. and then position. I'm going to change that from 3/4 of an inch to 0.5 and apply. Okay. And now I'm going to drag in my face frame. And I'm going to move it to the front of the cabinet. And I will click move to bottom, move to left to make sure it's flush with the wall, and move to back so it butts into the cabinet. While it's still selected, I'm going to hold my shift key and click the left or right panel and align the tops. This face frame was designed for a 24-inch cabinet, so it's a perfect fit, but we still have a little bit of work to do. I'm going to go to my plan view, and I'm going to click the cabinet box. Actually, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so I'm going to move this face frame forward. Holding my shift key, I'm going to draw a square around my cabinet parts. And if you look at my structure here on the right, oops, I forgot to click in the white space to unselect all my parts. So starting over, I'm going to hold the shift key, draw a square around all my cabinet box parts except for the face frame. Then you can see all the parts I have selected there. Now I can click this button here to group those parts, to combine them, so they're not just independent parts floating in space anymore. Okay, now I have a group of parts, two groups of parts. The face frame group of parts and the box parts are now grouped. Now I'm going to double click on this group and give it a name, and I'm just going to call it sample box. Okay. Now I can continue what I was doing before, which was trying to put the face frame on. Okay. Now now that these parts are grouped, I'm going to click the sample box, double click it, go to position, and the distance from left, I'm going to make that 0.25. Because the face frame was 1/2 inch wider than the cabinet box, I can have a 1/2 inch scribe on both sides of the cabinet. Now let's bring in a door pair. We'll bring it in 3D. And I'll move it to the left, move it to back. And holding my shift key while I have the door pair selected, I'll click on my box and align the tops. Now let's go back to the plan view. And I'll click on my white space. And I'm going to click on the door. Well, I'll double click on it. Go to position. And distance from left will be 0.5. That's because the door pair is 1 inch narrower than the face frame, and I want a 1/2 inch reveal from on both sides of the face frame. Now let's take a look at the elevation view. And I'm going to turn off my transparency to make it easier to see here. I'm going to select the door pair again, and I'll go to position, and the distance from bottom is going to be 4 inches, not 4.5. And that gives me my 1/2 inch reveal all the way around. So back to 3D. At this point, I'd like to combine the face frame with the box. So I'm going to click the face frame, hold my shift and click the box, and I can either do a Control G on my keyboard or click the group button like I did before. Now that the cabinet and the face frame are a group, I can change the texture of all of them at this. Well, I can move them all at the same time. Even if they weren't grouped, I could change the texture of them at the same time. But see there, I can move them simultaneously. I'm going to do a undo to move it back into the exact place it was before. Now let's make the texture of the cabinet box match the doors. So I'm going to go to Textures and scroll down to Woods, down to Pine. Here's a pine. So I'm going to hold my Shift key and drag onto the side panel, and that tells the program that I want to change every part of that cabinet that was using pine. That was using the previous material to this new material. So let's go to dark maple. That'll be a closer match. Shift and move. There we go. And let's put a countertop on the cabinet. So I'm going to go to let me look at the overall size of the cabinet. It's 24.5 by 24.75. Twenty-four and a half wide by 24.75 deep. So here's my new element that I'm going to use to create countertop. I'm going to put it on the floor, double click it, and I'll make the width 24.5, 24.75 deep. Height of 1 inch, 1 inch thickness. And then let's drop it on top of the cabinet. I'll move to left, move to back, and move to bottom. Now let's change the material. So I'm going to go to coverings. Well, actually, countertops, granite and marble. And let's try this one. I'll just drag and drop. And that is basically how you create a countertop. Is the same way you would create any other part for an object in Pro 100. Now, this is just a very simple box we created here, but using the shape editor, you can create just about anything you can dream up. This is an add-on for a box that I created and added to my library earlier. I can go to Textures, Woods, Pine, Dark Maple, and just like I did with the cabinet box there, I'm going to do the same thing for my add-on. So you can see here that the program is really powerful. You can shape your parts, you can combine them to create just about any type of cabinet you want. Then you can add sub-assemblies of cabinets, cabinet parts, or entire cabinets to your library. And then after that point, it's just drag and drop to create a new cabinet or a new cabinet layout. I hope you learned a lot from this video. If you have any other questions, feel free to give us a call at 574-299-5330. Check the website at www.pro100usa.com or email us at salesperson@pro100usa.com. Thanks for watching.